Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Please like and subscribe so I can tell more interesting stories. Now let's get started. You ever have that moment when everything feels so perfect, it's almost suspicious, yeah? That was me. Me and Richard, two lovebirds, two dreamers, sailing out of Tahiti on a 44-foot yacht named Hazanya. Bright sun, perfect breeze, water so blue it hurt your eyes. We were supposed to deliver Hazanya from Tahiti all the way to San Diego, about 4,000 miles. Just us. No backup, no plan B. But when you're in love, adventure seems like the logical thing to do. I mean, who wouldn't want to sail across the Pacific with their soulmate romantic right, or utterly stupid, depending on who you ask? Historians still debate whether this was courage or pure madness. The morning we left, I remember sipping coffee on the deck, watching dolphins race the boat. Richard was humming some song off-key, adjusting the sails like it was second nature. The man could fix anything. A genius with ropes, knots, and bolts. Me, I was the navigator, the dreamer, with my nose in the charts. There's this odd fact about open ocean sailing. Nobody tells you. The silence out there isn't really silent. It's full of whispers. The creak of the mast, the slap of water against the hull, the sigh of wind. It's like the ocean breathes. And when you're out there long enough, you start breathing with it. A week into the trip, we were flying. Steady winds. Perfect currents. Everything felt too easy. Should have known right. If life hands you perfection, it's probably setting you up for something ugly. Somewhere behind that endless horizon, something was stirring. We just didn't know it yet. One afternoon, Richard noticed the radio reports were weird, sparse, crackling static, no new weather updates. And that was strange. Open ocean, sure, but even then, radio weather should be reliable. Guess they're sleeping on the job, Richard joked, tapping the radio with the back of his hand. I laughed, but something tightened in my chest. A little voice whispering, "Pay attention." That night, the sunset was strange. No other word for it. The sky bled orange into this deep, violent purple. The clouds weren't soft, they were sharp, jagged, towering. The kind of clouds that don't float, they loom. You ever seen clouds like that, I asked. Richard squinted, pulled his cap lower. Not a fan, he muttered. Still, the ocean stayed weirdly calm, eerily calm. Like that moment in horror movies where the birds stop chirping. You know, something is coming. The next morning, the wind shifted. Not just shifted, dropped. Dead calm. Which for sailors is worse than bad wind. No movement. The sails just hung there limp like laundry on a line. Dead air means something big is gobbling up the atmosphere nearby. Check the barometer, Richard said. I did. My stomach nodded. Pressure was dropping. Fast. Now, here's your little historical tidbit. Back in the 80s, satellite weather wasn't nearly what it is now. Sailors like us relied on radio reports and sometimes just looking at the sky. And when the sky stops making sense, you start sweating. I tried to radio again. Static. Nothing. Maybe the antenna's loose, I offered. Nah, Richard said, frowning. This is wrong. By afternoon, the wind came back. But not the friendly kind. The wrong kind. Gusts. Erratic. Slamming from one direction, then another. The sea, which had been smooth as glass, started wrinkling. Small at first. Then, whitecaps. Waves slapping harder. The boat shuddered as if it too knew. This isn't just weather. At sunset, we both stood there staring at the horizon. Out there, something was building. You could feel it before you could see it. This weird, heavy weight in the air. The smell changed. Saltier, metallic. Even the dolphins disappeared. Babe, get some rest, Richard said, forcing a smile. We might have a long night. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But sleep, yeah, right. I crawled into the cabin anyway. Tried to close my eyes. But every creak, every snap of rope outside made my heart punch against my ribs. Somewhere around midnight, thunder, distant, then closer, then so close it rattled the windows. I climbed back out. The clouds, oh man, black walls, jagged forks of lightning tearing the sky in half, wind screeching now, not howling screeching. Richard was already harnessed in. We're gonna have to run it, he shouted over the wind. We can't outrun it, but we can ride it. The waves were getting mean. 7 feet, then 9, then higher. The boat rose and fell like an elevator in free fall. Here's your weird off-topic fact. Did you know flying fish can hit you in the face at night? No, seriously. One slapped me right across the cheek while I was trying to clip into the safety line. Left a red mark for hours. Not the danger I was expecting, but check that off the bucket list. By dawn, the sky was barely visible, just gray on gray. The ocean wasn't water anymore. It was walls, towering walls. And we were this tiny dumb toy trying to dodge them. Richard yanked the sails down. Reef everything, strip it down. We need her as small as possible. We scrambled, tied, yanked, hands bleeding from the ropes, salt stinging every cut. Barometer's crashing, I yelled. This is bad. This is real bad. Category 4? Maybe worse? Richard grunted. If the eye passes over us, we might make it. Historians still debate whether a boat like Hazanya was even built to survive something like this. Some say yes. Others, they say it was a miracle it held together as long as it did. But the worst hadn't even arrived yet. The worst thing about a hurricane isn't the waves. It's the sky. You'd think the ocean would be the scariest part, right? Nope. It's the clouds. The sky folds in on itself, darkens until it feels like the end of the world. The sun disappears completely, and the clouds, they don't move like clouds. They twist, spiral, collapse, rebuild. It's like watching the sky argue with itself about whether it should fall or explode. That morning, the wind screamed so loud it felt personal. Like it wasn't just weather, it was something alive, something angry. Richard was on deck, soaked, wrestling the wheel. His hair plastered to his face, teeth clenched, hands white-knuckled. "We're in it now," he shouted over the wind. "We're not going to dodge this one." The waves were coming from everywhere, not just one direction. That's the thing people don't get about hurricanes. There's no rhythm, no pattern, just chaos. One wave slams you from the left, another sucker punches you from behind. The boat lurches, groans, and honestly, so do your guts. The wind gauge spun wildly, 100 knots, 110. Then it just gave up and snapped off the mast. Useless. "Barometer's still dropping," I screamed, checking the needle. It's bottomed out. Lightning stabbed the sea like a furious toddler poking holes in paper. Each strike exploded in white-blue fire, lighting up the water, the deck. Richard's face tight with focus. And me, I was trying to pretend I was brave. Spoiler, I was not. Here's a weird little fact. You know that term batten down the hatches? It's literal. Old ships had wooden covers called hatch battens to seal the openings. We were living that reality, tying everything shut, locking down anything that could fly loose and become a missile. But even with every line tied, every sail reefed, every hatch sealed, it didn't feel like enough. The first big hit came at mid-morning. A wall of water, probably 30 feet, rose like a skyscraper in front of us. "Hang on," Richard roared. The bow climbed, it shuddered, almost stopped. Then slam. The boat tipped sideways. I swear the mast kissed the ocean. Water blasted over us, filling the cockpit, smashing into my chest so hard I thought my ribs would crack. But she bobbed back up. Somehow, we can't take too many. Like that, Richard muttered, wiping salt from his eyes. One wrong angle? I didn't want him to finish that sentence. I knew exactly what it meant. The storm wasn't just violent, it was relentless. Hours passed. Then more hours. Every second stretched into something ugly. I couldn't tell if it was noon or midnight. The sky didn't change, just endless, howling gray. Check the bilge, Richard barked. I scrambled below deck, slipped, slammed my hip against the table. Looked at the bilge pump. It was working barely. But water was coming in faster than it should. We've got a leak, I shouted. Starboard side. Keep the pump going, he yelled back. I cranked the manual pump with both hands. My arms burned. My back screamed. But you know what's great motivation, not wanting to drown. Another wave hit, harder. The boat rolled so far over that I could feel her shuddering like a living thing. And then, a sound I'll never forget. Crack. Rigging's going, Richard screamed. I dashed back up. One of the stays, thick cables holding the mast, was snapping strand by strand. The mast leaned. Not much, but enough to whisper. It's gonna fall. Cut the sails, Richard ordered. What? Cut them. I grabbed the rigging knife and slashed at the lines. Canvas whipped ropes snapped one sail, tore clean in half like paper. The boat spun sideways into the waves. Not good. Not good. Broadside is how boats die. Richard wrestled the wheel, fighting to turn her nose back into the waves. His hands bled. Salt water mixed with blood ran down his arms. But he held on. Then the wave. Not just a wave. A mountain. A black wall taller than anything we'd seen. I looked up, and it was still rising. Oh, no, was all I could say. Richard saw it too. He locked eyes with me. No words. Just that look. The kind that says I love you without needing sound. Get below, he finally shouted. I scrambled, slipped down the hatch, slammed it shut, wedged myself under the navigation table. And then impact. The whole world tilted. Violently. The mast snapped with a sickening crack. Wood splintered. Metal screamed. Something massive slammed into the side. Maybe the boom. Maybe the broken mast. The boat rolled. Not just tipped rolled, full on upside down. I felt weightless, heard glass shattering, things crashing. My head smashed against something hard, stars exploded behind my eyes. Then, darkness. For a moment, I thought that was it, that I was dead. But nope, joke's on me. When I woke up, it was worse. A weird little aside, while I have you here, did you know that octopuses sometimes punch fish? No, really. Scientists have caught them on video. Just straight up sucker punching random fish in the reef. No reason. Just bad mood, apparently. I totally get that now. Mother Nature was punching me. When I came to silence. No wind, no waves, no Richard. Just nothing. My head throbbed. Blood crusted in my hair. I was half submerged in water, sloshing around the cabin floor. I clawed my way up, opened the hatch. The mast, gone. Snapped clean off. The deck, wrecked. Ropes everywhere. The dinghy, missing. The sails, shredded. And Richard. My voice barely worked. I staggered onto the deck. Looked left, right. Nothing but endless gray water. Richard, I spun. Scanned every wave, every shadow. Nothing. Then I saw it, his safety harness, torn. one end still clipped to the boat, the other frayed, gone. A lump rose in my throat so fast it nearly choked me. No, 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 no. I collapsed onto the deck. Salt water, rain, tears. Couldn't tell them apart anymore. Historians still debate whether his harness snapped from the force, or whether a failure in the stitching was to blame. Doesn't matter. The result was the same. He was gone, and I was alone. There are certain moments when your brain just refuses to process, refuses to understand, refuses to believe. That was me sitting on the wrecked deck of Hazanya, staring at the broken end of Richard's safety line. My ears were ringing. My hands were shaking. My heartbeat was loud, like drums echoing in an empty cave. "Richard," I whispered, like somehow saying his name enough times might summon him back. I scanned the horizon again, useless, just gray, just water, just gone. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours. Time kind of folds in on itself when everything breaks. The boat groaned under me, a nasty complaining sound, the kind of sound that says, "Hey, I might sink now. Just FYI. Okay, Tami. Get it together." I said it out loud, hoping it would make it real. It didn't. Here's something funny. Well, not haha funny, but weird funny. Did you know that your brain in crisis does the dumbest things? Like I was seriously wondering if I had closed the galley drawer. As if that mattered while floating in the middle of the Pacific with a broken boat and no fiancé. I crawled down into the cabin. The scene down there? Yikes. Everything was tossed. The navigation table was flipped. Food lockers burst open. The radio, waterlogged, dead. The charts, some were ripped, others soaked into mush. And me, concussed. There was this pounding ache behind my eyes, the kind that makes you feel like your skull might split open. When I touched my head, my fingers came away sticky with blood. I stumbled to the mirror, a cut across my scalp. Not deep enough to kill me, but enough to make me look like an extra in a zombie movie. Swollen eye, split lip. Great. Just great. Still breathing. Still alive. Above deck, the storm wasn't gone, but the worst of it had passed. The sky was still angry, but it wasn't murderous. Just threatening. You know, like a grumpy cat instead of a tiger. First thing was water. I checked the tanks. One was cracked, leaking precious fresh water into the bilge, but the other, still intact. Thank God. Then food. I crawled through the mess. Found canned beans, crackers, peanut butter. Some waterlogged pasta I tossed. Not gourmet, but hey, 5-star dining compared to being dead. The mast? Yeah, the mast was toast. Snapped clean. A jagged stump where it once stood proud. The sails were shredded strips of fabric tangled around the deck like sad streamers after a bad party. I sat there staring at it, and one thought came through the fog. You're 500 miles from land. No radio. No mast. No Richard. Just you. Historians still debate whether it was stubbornness, shock, or sheer stupidity that got me moving next. Personally, I think it was spite. Like the universe said, "Bet she won't survive this." And I said, "Hold my beer." I grabbed the emergency manual, flipped to the section nobody ever actually expects to use jury-rigging a mast. And, it was ugly. Basically, I had to turn the broken, spare spinnaker pole into a makeshift mast, lash it to what was left of the rigging, patch together a sail from whatever fabric wasn't completely destroyed. "Sure," I muttered easy. "No problem. Totally normal Tuesday." But first, rest. My head was swimming. I tried to eat a cracker. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped it. Picked it up anyway. No dignity in survival, folks. I crawled into the least soggy corner of the bunk, hugged Richard's jacket to my chest. It still smelled like him. Salt sunscreen and that weird cologne he always wore, even though I teased him about it. "Where are you?" I whispered into the dark. Sleep came, but it was the bad kind. Half dreams, Richard's voice in my head. Not words, just feelings, echoes. Was it real? Was it the concussion? Hallucination? I don't know. But it felt like he was there, whispering, "Don't give up, Tam. Don't you dare give up." I jolted awake to the sound of something shifting above deck. Another wave. Another reminder the ocean was still watching. Morning came like a slap. Bright, brutal sunlight. The storm was gone, like it had never existed. Blue sky, puffy clouds, seagulls. Can you believe that actual seagulls? Where were they hiding during the storm jerks? And the ocean? Calm. Deceptively calm. As if it hadn't tried to murder me 24 hours ago. You know what's even more insulting? Flying fish flopping across the deck. One actually landed near my foot and stared at me like, "You good." No, I was not good. But breathing, still breathing. Time to get to work. I pulled out the toolbox. Thank the sailing gods Richard had been obsessive about maintaining it. Spare bolts, wrenches, rope, tape, zip ties, and duct tape. Bless whoever invented duct tape. Seriously, someone give that person a medal. Step 1 was clearing the wreckage, untangling ropes, cutting away the shredded sails, securing the broken mast so it wouldn't punch a hole through the deck, all while my head throbbed like someone was jackhammering inside it. Here's a random fact to distract you. Sloths can hold their breath longer than dolphins. Yeah. 7 minutes. Why do I know this? I have no idea. But it popped into my head while I was cutting rope. Probably some leftover trivia Richard told me once. Midway through, I had a moment. Just stopped, looked around. Endless blue. Nothing. Just me. A busted boat. And a planet's worth of water. I laughed. Out loud. Half crazy. Okay, ocean. You win. You're bigger. You're meaner. But guess what? I'm still here. That laugh turned into tears. Then back into laughter. Because honestly, what else can you do? The ocean doesn't care. The sky doesn't care. But I do. And I wasn't done yet. I wish I could say that after surviving the hurricane, things got easier. You know. Sunshine rainbows, a friendly dolphin, pointing the way home. Nope. Not even close. When I woke up the next morning, it was with that brutal kind of grogginess that comes from your body realizing, hey, we're not dead yet, but we probably should be. My head was still pounding. My arms were sore. My whole body felt like it had been put through a blender, set to regret. I sat there on the broken deck, staring at the horizon, half hoping, half dreading, that Richard would suddenly pop up laughing, telling me this was all a terrible prank. But the ocean doesn't give back what it takes. His harness, that frayed end, it haunted me. I couldn't stop picturing it. Historians still debate whether it was a failure in the stitching, a freak mechanical failure, or just the sheer impossible force of that rogue wave. Either way, the result was the same. He was gone. And I was very, very alone. I remember clenching his jacket in my hands, whispering, "You said you'd never leave me." His voice wasn't there. Not really. But somewhere in the back of my head, it was like I could hear him answer, "I didn't want to." That hit harder than anything the storm had thrown at me, but I didn't have time to sit in that grief. Because survival. It's not polite. It doesn't wait for you to finish crying. It taps its watch and says, "Hey buddy, you've got work to do. First order of business, figure out if lasagna was even floatable." Because here's the deal. If the hull's cracked below the waterline, game over. You don't drift. You sink. Fast. I checked, crawled around the edges, opened every hatch, ran my hands along the inner walls, and miracle of miracles, the hull was intact, bruised, battered, but holding. That meant I had a shot. Now, about that missing mast. Yeah, still a problem. I needed a way to rig something, anything, that could let me steer catch a little wind and hopefully drift my way toward Hawaii. Best case, maybe someone would spot me. Worst case? Well, let's not talk about that. I scavenged the spinnaker pole, strong, lightweight, long enough to maybe serve as a jury mast. I hauled it onto the deck, lashing it upright to what was left of the mast base with every rope line and scrap of cordage I could find. Duct tape saves lives, I muttered, wrapping it like my life depended on it. Because it did. Then came the Frankenstein sail. I cut pieces from the shredded mainsail, and the storm jib stitched them together with fishing line and thread from the emergency sewing kit. It looked absolutely ridiculous. Like a kite designed by a 5-year-old, but it flapped, and it caught wind. Barely. Here's an odd fact for you people in the 18th century. Used to believe that cheese could predict storms. No joke. They thought certain types of cheese would sweat before bad weather. Honestly, I'd have traded my navigation charts for a really good block of cheddar right about then. Once the sail was up, if you could even call it that, I turned to the next nightmare steering. The wheel was functional, but without the balance of the full mast and sails the boat was, well, let's just say Hazanya had the personality of a drunk shopping cart, zigzagging, fighting me at every turn. I pulled out the sextant. Remember, this was before GPS, before smartphones. You wanted to know where you were. You measured the angle between the horizon and the sun, or the stars, assuming you could see them. Problem 1, I hadn't eaten. Problem 2, I hadn't drunk enough water. Problem 3, I had a concussion. My first attempt at using the sextant absolute comedy. I kept blinking, trying to focus. The horizon danced. The numbers blurred. Oh yeah, I mumbled. This is going great. But slowly, painfully, I got a reading. Rough, sloppy, but enough to figure out I was somewhere northeast of Tahiti. Hawaii was, just 500 miles that way. No biggie. No radio. No distress signal. Just me. My busted sail. My sad excuse for navigation. And the endless, endless ocean. And then, the silence hit. You'd think after the hurricane silence would be a relief. Nope. It was worse. The ocean, when it's calm, it's too big, too empty. The sky presses down on you. The water stretches forever. And suddenly, you realize just how small you are. A floating dot. That's it. A single, irrelevant speck on a map so big, the people back home wouldn't even know where to start looking. I'd catch myself talking out loud. Okay, Richard, what would you do? Or, you're not helping, babe. When the wind shifted the wrong way. Was it grief? Hallucination? Sanity hanging by a thread? Historians still debate that one too. At one point, I thought I saw a ship on the horizon. A tiny speck. I waved, jumped, flashed the mirror, screamed until my throat hurt. It was a cloud, a freaking cloud. Cue the breakdown. Ugly crying, slamming my fists against the deck, kicking a bucket, then apologizing to the bucket because, it's the only company I had. But after every meltdown, survival pulled me back. Check the sails, adjust the lines, pump the bilge, eat, drink, sleep, repeat. Did I mention sleep was awful? The nightmares, the dreams where Richard was right there, laughing, cooking, teasing me about my terrible navigation skills. And then I'd wake up to the empty boat, the silence, the sound of waves slapping the hull like a cruel joke. One night, staring at the stars, I remembered something Richard used to say. The stars won't save you, but they'll tell you where you are. So I stared and charted and adjusted my course by those stars every night, whispering his words like a mantra. Come on, Hazanya, I said to the boat one morning. You and me now. Let's get home. Waking up on day 4? Or was it day 5, honestly? Who even knew anymore? I had this thought. This isn't a rescue mission. This is a math problem. A miserable, soggy, life or death math problem. The numbers were simple. Well, simple if you ignored the fact that I was concussed, dehydrated, and operating on peanut butter and sheer spite. Roughly 500 miles to Hawaii, about 41 days of food, if I rationed hard. Water, even tighter. And wind. Oh, the wind. A stubborn, passive-aggressive breeze that came and went like a moody cat. Sometimes it pushed me west toward Hawaii. Sometimes it spun me in circles, like the ocean was saying, "Oh, honey, you thought you were in charge here?" First priority water. The surviving tank had maybe 60 gallons. Not terrible, but the math got grim fast. Standard needs, about a half-gallon per day. But this wasn't standard, so I rationed, hard, a few sips at a time, just enough to wet my mouth. Pretend it was satisfying. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Food. Let's just say I developed a complicated emotional relationship with canned beans. Beans for breakfast, beans for lunch, a luxurious spoonful of peanut butter for dinner. I joked out loud, 5-star dining. Gordon Ramsay would love this, and there it was again. Talking to no one. Well, not no one exactly. To Richard, or the version of him that now lived in my head. Some days, I'd swear I could hear his voice. Tighten that line, babe. Nah, you've got the wind wrong. Pull it starboard. You're doing great. Keep going. Historians still debate whether that was grief hallucination or the brain doing whatever it takes to survive. Mornings were the worst. That first moment when you wake up, forget where you are, then remember. Oh, right. Still stranded, still floating, still alone. But there was no time to wallow. Every day was a checklist. Check the sail still up. Kinda. Check the mast, still vertical. Check the bilge still dry-ish. Pump out water. Adjust the rigging. Check the sun angle. Plot position. Eat. Drink. Try not to cry. Repeat. Here's a weird little fact for you. Sea turtles can hold their breath for 5 hours. 5 hours. Meanwhile, I couldn't go 5 minutes without mentally gasping over some new problem, like the solar still. It was supposed to convert seawater into drinkable water using sunlight. Neat little invention. Except, it worked about as well as a toaster in the rain. It made maybe a cup a day on a good day. But hey, a cup was better than none. Then there were the hallucinations. Oh, those were fun. One afternoon, I saw what I swore was a floating convenience store. Neon signs. Shelves stocked with water bottles and chips. I even waved at the imaginary cashier before realizing, nope. Just a weirdly shaped cloud. The worst was the constant second guessing. Did I set the sail right? Is the current helping or dragging me off course? Am I actually moving toward Hawaii, or am I just wandering? At night, the stars saved me, or at least pretended to. Polaris, my old friend, I'd line it up with the sextant check my crude notes try to confirm I was headed vaguely northwest. The funny part, even now, there's an open debate among survival experts about whether my navigation was skill or luck. Probably both. Maybe neither. I don't know. But it was working, sort of. The days blended, sometimes sunny, sometimes brutal. The sun burned my skin, no matter how much I covered up. Saltwater sores opened on my hands, my ankles. Every movement hurt, sitting hurt, standing hurt, lying down hurt, breathing hurt. One afternoon I spotted something, way off on the horizon. A speck, a ship. It had to be. I screamed. Waved. Flashed my mirror. Fired off the emergency flare. Nothing. It was either too far or no one was looking. Or worse, another stupid cloud pretending to be salvation. Yep. Cloud. Again. Thanks, brain. Cue breakdown number. Who's even counting? I curled up on the deck, sobbing into Richard's jacket, whispering over and over. I can't. I can't. I can't. But somewhere between the sobs, that voice came back. Clear, firm. Yes, you can. You already are. And dang it, it was right. So I got up, pumped the bilge, tightened the lines, ate 2 sad crackers as a reward, and stared down the horizon like it owed me something. There's a phrase sailors use, red sky at night sailor's delight. Red sky and morning sailor take warning. I saw both, sometimes on the same day. Thanks, Pacific. Real helpful. One afternoon, something changed. The waves shifted. The wind steadied. The clouds thinned. The air smelled different, less salty, less ocean, more, I don't know, earthy. I climbed up, scanned the horizon, and wait, was that number? No way. A line, thin, faint, but not a cloud, not a wave. Land. Is that? My voice cracked. I grabbed the binoculars. Shaky hands. Focused. Yes, yes, land. A tiny green smear against the endless blue. Let out this laugh-sob hybrid noise that probably scared the seagulls. Oh my God. Oh my God, oh my God. But then the dread hit just as fast. I was still miles out, still on a broken boat, still had to survive the approach. And anyone who knows sailing knows the shoreline. That's the most dangerous part. One wrong wave, one wrong rock. The ocean's last cruel joke. Not now, I muttered. Not after all this. Not now. I grabbed the tiller, pulled the sail tighter, whispered to Richard to the boat to the ocean itself. Hold together, Hazanya. Just a little longer. Land. I could see it. I could smell it. I could feel it. But let me tell you something cruel about the ocean, seeing land, and actually getting to it. 2 completely different nightmares. The winds didn't suddenly become helpful. Nope. They turned shifty, fickle. Like the universe was saying, "Oh, you thought this was over? Cute." I gripped the tiller, squinting at the faint green line on the horizon. It looked close, achingly close. But every wave, every stubborn gust kept nudging Hazanya sideways, dragging me off course like a bad Uber driver, refusing to follow the map. Come on, work with me, I growled at the sail, at the wind, at the boat, at the universe. The closer I got, the rougher the water became. Swells built up as the ocean pushed toward the shallows. It's a strange thing. Open ocean waves roll smooth and long, but near shore, they jack up. Steeper, meaner, choppier. Like the sea was throwing one last tantrum before letting me go. I scanned the shoreline. No docks. No marinas. Just cliffs. Rocks. Breaking surf. Awesome. Here's your weird fact of the day: coconut crabs live on these remote islands, and they can grow big enough to snap a golf club in half. Yeah. As if the ocean wasn't scary enough, now I had to think about giant land-dwelling, golf club-killing crabs. Lovely. Back to the waves. One crashed into the stern, spinning me sideways. The jury-rigged mast groaned. My sad excuse for a sail flapped violently, threatening to tear free. No. No, 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 I muttered, scrambling to adjust the lines, hands shaking. Rope burns layered over old rope burns. Salt stung every cut. I needed to pick a spot. A break in the reef. Somewhere I wouldn't be smashed into pieces. But there was no map, no guide, just guesswork. Historians still debate whether my next move was seamanship or sheer blind luck. Either way, I spotted what looked like a gap, a narrow line, where the waves didn't seem as frothy. Less white water, less murderous. I aimed straight for it. Hold together, Hazanya, please. A set of big rollers came in. The first one lifted the boat high. I clung to the tiller, praying the mast wouldn't snap. The boat surfed down the face of the wave, faster than it ever had, water spraying everywhere. Second wave, bigger. The bow dipped. Water flooded the deck. I thought we'd nosedive straight into the blue, but somehow the hull popped back up. Come on, come on. Third wave, the breaker, the one that either ends it or ends it. It caught the boat, lifted it like a toy, and hurled it forward. I lost control of the tiller, just held on for dear life as Hazanya surged toward the reef. A crunch, a sickening scrape. Wood on rock, metal on coral. I braced, eyes shut, waiting for the sound of the hull splitting open. But no, another jolt. Then stillness. I peeked. We were wedged hard. The hull tipped half on the reef, half floating. Water lapped at the sides. But we weren't sinking. Oh my God, I gasped. We did it. I scrambled down, grabbed the emergency bag, flares water, the few supplies I hadn't already burned through, and climbed out over the battered rail. The reef was sharp. Coral cut into my feet. Didn't care. Kept moving. Ahead, sand. Glorious, stupid, beautiful sand. I stumbled, fell, crawled, dragged myself forward until my fingers dug into dry, solid earth. I lay there, on my back, staring up at the sky, listening to the waves behind me. My brain couldn't decide whether to laugh, cry, or just shut off entirely. I made it, I whispered. I actually made it. But survival, it's a jerk. Doesn't let you relax for long. I sat up, looked around. No buildings, no roads, just jungle. Dense, steamy, unfriendly, awesome, cool, great. The first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not the ocean quiet. Land quiet. Birds, insects, the wind moving through trees. After 41 days of nothing but waves and wind, it was surreal. I staggered to my feet. My legs felt like wet noodles. Land legs are a thing, by the way. After weeks at sea, your body forgets how to walk without swaying. I pulled the emergency mirror from the bag, aimed it at the sky, flashed it, just in case someone was watching. Planes, drones, UFOs, didn't care. Then I started walking, stumbling really, toward something. Anything. Here's a random fact to lighten the mood: sea cucumbers, when threatened, literally eject their own intestines as a defense mechanism. Yep, look it up. Sometimes I felt like my own guts were ejecting themselves after everything I'd been through. About an hour in, I saw something that made my heart flip. A structure. Not big, not fancy, but a shack, a roof, a radio antenna poking crookedly into the sky. I half laughed, half sobbed. Please, please let someone be here. I banged on the door. No answer. Banged again. Nothing. Then a voice. behind me. You okay? I spun. A man stood there, local, tanned, holding a fishing spear, staring at me like I'd just crawled out of the sea, which, to be fair, I had. I burst into tears. Help, please. My boat. My fiancé. I've been. Words failed. I collapsed. Next thing I knew, I was in a hammock. Cool water pressed to my lips. Voices around me. Concerned. Confused. Kind. I was safe. Not whole. Not okay. But safe. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not salt. Not mildew. Not the briny, suffocating smell of the ocean that had been my constant companion for over a month. No. This was earth. Dirt. Leaves. Wood smoke. The smell of life. I blinked awake in a small shack. Wooden beams. Woven mats. A hammock gently swaying beneath me, which, by the way, felt exactly like being back on the boat, minus the constant threat of drowning. There were voices outside. Someone laughed. A kettle whistled. The normalcy of it felt surreal, like waking from a nightmare only to realize, yeah, the nightmare was real, but somehow, so was this. A woman peeked in. Warm smile. Kind eyes. She said something in a language I didn't understand, but honestly, I think the words were less important than the tone. Gentle. Reassuring. She pressed a cup into my hands, something herbal bitter and scalding hot. I didn't care. I drank it. Soon, someone who spoke English arrived. A man probably in his late 50s with a radio clipped to his belt and weathered hands that looked like they'd seen a lifetime of sun and salt. You're the one from the sailboat, yeah? He asked, pulling up a wooden crate like it was a chair. I nodded. My throat was raw, my voice barely more than a whisper. Hazanya, I hit the reef. Yeah, we saw the wreck this morning. Figured it wasn't there yesterday. He scratched his chin. Lucky you didn't try that landing at high tide. You'd have gotten flipped. Lucky, I echoed, but my voice cracked, because it didn't feel like luck. Not really, I explained. Or tried to. The hurricane, Richard, the mast, the jury rig, the 41 days. Somewhere in the middle of it, I broke down again, hands over my face, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. The man sat quietly, didn't interrupt, just waited. And when the sobs finally softened, he handed me a rag to wipe my face. Well, he said, first things first. You're alive. That's no small thing. Historians still debate whether sheer grit, divine intervention, or a perfect cocktail of stubbornness and luck was what brought me to this beach. I've stopped debating it. I just accept it. Over the next few days, the local community nursed me back to something resembling functional. Food that wasn't canned beans. Water that didn't taste like desperation. Sleep, real sleep, without the endless rocking of the sea. But here's the part nobody tells you about surviving something like this. Land doesn't fix it. Your feet might be on solid ground, but your head is still out there. Floating, drifting. I kept jolting awake, gasping, convinced I'd fallen overboard. I'd reach for Richard in my sleep, only to wake up clutching an empty blanket. Every creak of the wooden hut sounded like the groan of the boat's rigging. Every gust of wind made me flinch. The rescuers got the radio working. A call went out. Within a day, the Coast Guard responded. Soon, an official boat arrived. Papers, questions, forms, statements. I walked them through everything, every brutal detail. When I got to the part about Richard, I choked. Did you search? I asked. After the storm, did anyone look for him? The officer shook his head, eyes heavy with the weight of too many bad answers. No, not in those conditions. A man overboard in a Category 4 He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I knew. I'd always known. But hearing it out loud still felt like being punched. The locals helped me salvage what little they could from Hazanya. The boat was unsalvageable, beyond repair. But they hauled out a few things. The emergency beacon that had never worked. My soggy charts. Richard's jacket. I held that jacket like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. Here's an odd little fact to lighten the mood. Sea otters hold hands when they sleep, so they don't drift apart. I wish humans had that option. Wish I'd had that option with Richard. The days dragged. I gave statements, talked to reporters, answered questions I didn't want to answer. Some people treated me like a miracle. Others, like a curiosity. You know how people can be. Whispering. How did she survive, but not him? Did she do something wrong? Survivor's guilt is an ugly, vicious thing. It chews at you. Tells you lies. That you should have done more. That you should have held on harder. That you didn't deserve to make it when someone else didn't, even now. All these years later, that voice still sneaks in sometimes. But there was one moment, a simple, quiet one that I'll never forget. I stood on the shoreline one evening, just staring at the ocean, watching the waves roll in, and I realized I didn't hate it. The same ocean that tried to kill me. That took Richard. That left me broken and alone. It was still beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful. I whispered into the wind, I forgive you. And maybe I meant the ocean. Or maybe I meant myself. The next morning, a small prop plane arrived to take me back to the mainland. I climbed aboard, hugged the pilot like he was Santa Claus, and strapped in. As we lifted off, I looked down at the wreck of Hazanya one last time. Broken, battered, but still there. And I whispered, thank you. You got me home. Not the way I wanted, not the way I'd planned, but home. So, that's the story. My story. The story of how a 44-foot yacht named Hazanya, a woman who wasn't ready to give up, and a man whose love never really left me, somehow made it through something no one ever expects to face. When I think back on it now, it feels like a dream, or maybe a movie I once saw. The ocean, the endless blue, it still lives in my bones. Sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I swear I can still feel the gentle rock of the waves underneath me, like the world itself is still swaying. I won't lie to you. Coming back to land wasn't the end of the story. Not really. Because surviving, well, that's just step one. Healing, forgiving, learning how to breathe without waiting for the next wave to crash. That's the real journey. There are days when I still wake up reaching for Richard, and there are days when I smile knowing that somewhere, somehow, his voice is still with me, whispering, laughing, telling me I tightened the sail wrong. Again, the ocean gave me the worst days of my life, but it also gave me the greatest lesson I've ever learned. You are stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and capable of surviving things you never imagined you could. So wherever you are listening to this, whether it's your couch, your car, or curled up in bed, remember this. Storms don't last forever. And even when the sky falls and the sea rises and everything feels lost, there's still a way through. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening to my story. Good night.